Hi everybody and welcome back to the channel. Phantom. This is the F-4G Phantom from Hasegawa in a 1/48 scale. This is a kind of bargain that I made a few days ago from a friend. As you can see, the box is slightly damaged on the side and on the tape here, number P4. This is a glory from the past because it was a model produced by Hasegawa, I think, in usually they place a year around their box, 1987. So this is a box from the late 80s, And I remember when they arrived for the first time on the market, this was a blast, because there was few stuff in 48 to do the Phantom, and mostly was coming with the monogram, but I think the monogram models, despite they were wonderful, in my opinion, they are still some of the nicest shape ever about the Phantom, and even more about the details about the air intakes, the side air intakes, despite they didn't made any version of the long nose Phantom, so this was a blast when it arrived on the market because Hasegawa made the entire family at the time, and that have to be a top-notch model, so it have to be the edge of their production, so it was the excellence that they can reach in the late 80s, in that years, golden age of modeling, 90s, the magic 90s. This was something absolutely beautiful to have in your own collection and even more nicer to build up. Sometimes it was disappointing because they started to do the series in the middle of the 80s, with the Phantom, with the short nose Phantom, like the CD version or the B, and all the Navy Phantom. All the Navy Phantom are short nose edition, despite the Marines and added the RF4 that was similar to the long nose one, but it was just the Marine Corps that had it, the Marines. And it was a little bit disappointing because I remember that back in the days I used to collect the money to buy this stuff, and it was a little bit disappointing because a part of the fuselage was engraved and the other part was recessed, so you didn't know if you had the positive or negative lines over the model. Back in time it was absolutely tricky to, today also is still quite tricky to repanel completely a model, and that was basically the biggest lack that you had in old generation monogram that have been also reboxed by Revell after 30 years, I think. So you have, with the Revell kits, you always have to be a little bit careful about what you are going to buy. Please read it today. There is the way to read the description in Google and look for the model that you are going to buy, if it is a quality model, because sometimes they use also to rebox. Even Revell did rebox some Hasegawa boxes of the Phantom, like the Royal Navy Phantom. The UK Phantom is completely inside an Hasegawa box, so it's absolutely a must to have, So basically the family was divided in the short nose Phantom, mostly American Phantom, the long nose Phantom like this one, and the Raccoon Phantom RF series, plus the British Phantom that had a completely different structure in the tail because the motor were British motors, so they were much bigger in the diameter, so became much more aggressive. Probably the British Phantom is my favorite ever. I think I have 3 or 4 boxes, even from Hasegawa, So the most replicated kit was constantly the American Phantom, Inside, this was a kind of damaged box because I took it for something that is outrageous to say, It was really something like a couple of beer in an ordinary pub. So I'm not talking of beer in fancy places and so on. So for something that was around really, let me guess, $20, something like that. As you can see, I had here spare the cachet that I had from Microscale. This was the original Super Scale International, so it was even before the Microscale, and it is dedicated to a library of the DG Phantom. The G Phantom was the radar suppression version of the Phantom, so you had a special radar and a special combo of missile under the body, able to destroy radar. It was missions again, radar station and anti-aircraft station, that was giving the name the WW here on the tail, that wee, that means wild weasel, the wild weasel mission that they used to do, and they were entered in the service, I think, in the 80s, early 80s, and it was used until the Gulf War, so it made for more than 25 years it was in service. It was an American, strictly American Phantom. No other external operators outside the US never fly with this particular version of the Phantom, so it was critical to find the proper decal. Why? Because inside this box the only lack that I found, and for me was not such big issue because the model, as I said, is fantastic, not to have the ordinary decal coming from the box, you know. So this decal sheet, it was not included in my box because it had opened bags. As you can see here, I replaced the bags. I like to have my models completely in plastic, you know, and thanks God, because in the models from Hasegawa, usually the transparent parts are together with the decal sheet. So if somebody tells you that this kit is missing the decal sheet in Hasegawa, always check if not together with the sheet of the decal there was neither also the transparent part, because you can manage a model without the decal, you cannot manage a model without the transparent. So that is absolutely a part that you need, and as you can see here it is present, you know. They also basically gave you usually the standard part coming from an F-4G, that was the ordinary Phantom, you know. This was still featuring the spare of missiles, you know, that they had inside. Little later on, Hasegawa completely took it away. Also the side winders are there, you know, M9, I think M9L from the end. Not so wonderful, but you know, you have always to place this model in the years that it belongs to. So it was a model of the late 80s, you know. As you can see, the model is completely recessed, so it's completely negative detail, so it's absolutely good, this stuff. The fitting is almost perfect, you know, because this was the edge of the production of Hasegawa of the tiers. And as I say, back in the days I built up several versions of this Phantom because I had several clients that simply wanted the build up of this model, and every time became very, very nice, and always very, very nice looking, you know. And I think that right now for me is the proper moment to have a F-4G, because the library basically of the F-4G, despite here you see in this painting scheme, this was the 37 Tactical Fighter Wing 561, based in Georgia Air Force Base in California, and the plane is referred to a machine flying I think in the early 80s, in the early 90s, sorry, there is not the year, but I remember that the F-4G was famous to have that type of livery, and that type of livery was extremely 80s because it had a completely gloss white undersurface, so it was not gray, not the ugly combo color that arrived later on in the 90s with the different shade of gray, the low visibility scheme they call it. But I deeply prefer the old version of the Phantom with the white under part of the plane and the camo coming from the Vietnam War of the ordinary camouflage of the Phantom over there. So for me that is absolutely the nicest ever, and thanks God that this decal extra sheet that I found is exactly referred to one of that planes, you know. I think it was the same, that was the 561 and this was the 562. So as you can see, California 1980. So this is absolutely one of these versions that I told you with white underpart. So I absolutely love this game with all, you see, with all the data stencil over, so 80s, you know. This is a plane of the 80s and the model from the 90s. This is a blast from the past, in my opinion. This is absolutely a must to have. The model indeed is well detailed, still considering the age. Of course, all the cockpit you can change today using a resin detail set from Iris. You know, these models have to be displayed with open cockpit to show up what's inside, and so it's very, very easy. If you already take a resin cockpit of the F-4G, there is millions of stuff. I think I already have it from Iris, that from back in the days, you know, but it's not so expensive at all. Okay, despite the type of model that we are talking here, as I say, they pay 20 bucks for this, but the real price of this stuff is always around 50 euros or not 60 euros. You know, when I had the shop, Hasegawa used to rebox this type of models and place a brand new box art, brand new decals, and you had to pay the model 3 times more the prices that I just told you now. So in my opinion, of course, this is absolutely something that today have been overclassed by, for example, the Academy models, despite the Academy at today still didn't made any version of the long nose Phantom, and the Meng kit, there is the Meng kit that is absolutely fantastic, so that is the status of the art, but the prices is, I think the Meng kit is around 80 to 90 bucks, something like that, you know, plus expedition. So this is still a perfect choice to build up a great Phantom, you know, and believe me, I see several in the contest in modeling contest, when the modeler knows how to build it up and how to paint and how to make the final finishing, the final touch on this model, this is absolutely eye-catching. So this is something that if you love the plane from the 60s and the 70s, the Phantom is absolutely a must, absolutely a must to have. As you can probably understand, I'm so glad about this bargain, and I just wanted to show up how also model coming from the 90s is anyway still a great possibility to build up a fantastic model. You know, modern people, today's modeler don't know so much about these old items. If not, they didn't start to read online the review. There is millions of review about this model. There is in YouTube a kit review and build up review of very good modelers that made excellent stuff with these old boxes. And if you can find that this type of price is something that you can absolutely not miss. That's it. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next.